right, welcome everyone to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. I'm your host. I go by Granite. I have a very special guest here today, a first-time guest. He's beloved by many. He's the kid. He's like the cool kid from high school who could hang out with the jocks or the goths or the Nazis or the blacks even. He can vibe with any group.
Hell
Welcome,
yeah.
Mr. Wormwood.
Oh man, that was quite the intro. I'll have to live up to it, but I don't think I'll be able to, bud. So I appreciate it though.
Yeah, the way we refer to him in my condo complex is number one fake cell. Number one fake cell and wife guy.
Yeah, I've somehow survived having a bunch of beloved incel moots. They haven't found me and killed me yet, so I'm thankful.
Oh, and the other voice you hear there is DegreeStudies. You all know him by now, but Wormwood. Speaking of wife guy, can you put this to rest for me? What does this term "brap hog" mean?
Well, it's like a really weird, perverted term
It
about like,
is, yeah.
and I was kind of I used it in a pretty innocuous way, and then I found out I really didn't know what it was, and I'm not even kidding. Um, like I just used it in place of like pog because I thought it was like, thick. But I
Yeah,
discovered that's not the case, and I won't. I'll let your viewers look
Google
up
it.
the
They can
term.
Google it like I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to defile their beautiful ears with the language,
No,
but
Wormwood, you're like surrendering to the occupied government of discourse and rhetoric right now. Like I've said this to you before, but language is bottom up. The word means what we say it means. If you go to Urban Dictionary, there's a wholesome definition and a filthy definition, and we
yeah, yeah.
prescribe to the wholesome definition because we're wholesome guys.
That is a truth, man. I think yeah, you turned me on to that degree studies. I was not even aware of the I kind of felt a huge wave of relief when you sent me that definition because now I have an argument to make here. So, but yeah, I don't I'm actually a very normal guy in real life. I hope you guys know that. So I don't throw around that term willy-nilly, but
I mean,
it's
I
fun to
don't believe
use.
you. I feel like I know that not to be true, but it is what it is.
I kept seeing you say it, and I didn't know you didn't. I didn't think you were literally into what Urban Dictionary says it means, but I thought that was the joke.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then I didn't realize until later you were using it kind of in a different way.
yeah. Absolutely. You know, I'm a pure innocent boy. So,
Well, all right. So let's jump into it. We're here talking about the movie Heavyweights from 1995, and that's 30 years ago, right? Is this the 30th anniversary?
yep.
That we didn't plan that. That's just that's how that worked out. I'm probably gonna do 4 or 5 movies in the coming months that are like kind of not 90s teen or child nostalgia pieces. And I think this is a good one to start off with. When I reached out to both of you, you're both like yeah, totally. I'm all in on this on this movie. And I didn't even realize degree studies. You had like your back when you were on X.com. You've since departed, but your banner was from this movie.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Wormwood, you were a big fan as well. Tell me about your history with heavyweights, Wormwood.
I've seen it a handful of times. I just rewatched it yesterday. But the first time I saw it was my freshman year of high school, actually. So I didn't see it for a while. It's not like a movie I grew up with when I was really young. Um, and I saw it with my buddy on the wrestling team who was an upperclassman. And he was a heavyweight. He was our 215 pounder, and he's this really hilarious guy. And he talks with a lisp, you know, like a really dramatic one. And he loves this movie. So he like he heard I had never watched it before, and he's like, Wormwood, we're watching this right now. And he whipped out a huge bag of candy, and we watched this together. So So yeah, I
Two
love it.
fifteen. 215 and what height? What height are we talking about?
He was like 5'9", so he was a big boy. He was a good football player and wrestler. So
Um, and then degree studies. Tell me about your history. I think goes a little further. Uh, Tell me about your history with this movie.
Yeah, I think my brother and I rented it at some point, and then it was on cable a lot. Um, and I would always watch it. I mentioned to you guys earlier that like I believe we did this recent episode about movies that would make people like America, and one of the ideas that percolated during that was could we have other list episodes about certain subcultures in America or subgenres of American film. And one thing that got stuck in my head was like the fat canon. Mostly
Mm-hmm.
maybe music and literature as well. But to me, this is in the fat canon. And like, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that being fat is good, but being fat is American.
it's cool. It's cool.
And I think one thing I love about this movie is that I think for a long time, I don't know when this started. Maybe it's as old as civilization itself. But there is like a adult fat guy Riz that everybody acknowledges. Like nobody's surprised when they hear Chris Farley was dating a model or something. Obviously, he was very famous, but there is a certain fat guy Riz. But I like that this movie has fat kid Riz, and we now live in the time of the Rizzler, and so
Yeah.
fat kid Riz is like an important thing. But the moment in this movie that like speaks to me so much, and I'm not going to get the quote right, but there's the kid from Mighty Ducks, I think.
Which is about half the cast. About half the kids are in Mighty Ducks.
Okay, but he's like the tan guy.
Yeah.
The
Uh, he gets kicked out. Josh.
Josh, the
Yeah.
Jewish
Josh.
one.
Yes.
Brian
So
Bond. His dad's the lawyer. Yeah.
I feel like what really sets the tone for this movie is somebody comes up to Josh and is like, "Have you seen the nurse, the new nurse? The nurse is really hot this year." And the Josh
I
character
know which line you're going for.
just goes, "This pleases me." Uh,
Yeah.
which is like
Yeah.
hilarious little fat kid Riz. And you also sort of have to assume that like I don't know who wrote this movie. They were certainly a genius, but I wonder
Judd
if
Yeah. And
okay,
Apatow and
I didn't even
Brill.
realize that.
Pretty interesting development of this movie, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense why the script is so good. But like that line, I was wondering too. Like, okay, this kid's already a little famous. Like maybe this is just him. Like he's sort of like the 13-year-old Wilder Valderrama of 1987 LA. Like he's just walking around looking at 12-year-old girls being like, "You're with me, leather." Just risen up the Sunset Strip. That's what I like to believe anyway.
Yeah, I figured that line and delivery was like they were trying to evoke like the Godfather or something. Not that that's a line that is used in the Godfather, but it just seemed like a mob boss would say that. Like
Right,
did you
totally.
get the package? Yes, this pleases me. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point or a great part. But yeah, it's Apatow wrote it, and I think the director Brill. I don't know if he co-wrote, whatever, but he's the same. And then the director was Steve Brill, the same guy who wrote the Mighty Ducks movies, and then
Yep.
later did like
And he was
5
in,
or 6. Yeah,
yeah, I was just gonna say he was the guy in The Wedding Singer. You guys probably remember too, and he's had some some big deals. But I think this was like right after that Mighty Ducks fame, right?
yeah, it was like kind of in the middle of the Mighty Ducks run,
Okay,
um, like after number 2, I think.
okay,
And yeah, he and then he went on to do like 5 or 6 like Sandler slop movies, including like Little Nicky.
yeah,
Yeah, is there a connection? I guess it's just Apatow between those crews because there's the guy who plays the cameraman is basically only in Adam Sandler movies and also
yeah.
this.
Well, did you guys
That
know
guy.
that? Go ahead, Granted. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Wormwood. I think we're gonna say the same thing. Go ahead.
Oh, well, there was um, they had pitched this movie to Sandler and Farley, and they rejected it. And they didn't even have a script yet, and then they went to, the production company and pitched it, and they had this idea about this fat camp and stuff. But
Yeah,
so there was
yeah,
kind of a connection to Sandler there.
yeah. It was originally Farley and Sandler. I think originally it was supposed to be more of like a Billy Madison PG-13 sort of thing,
Yeah.
more for like adults and teens. And then they sort of rewrote it down. I think then they got like interest from Disney and they wrote it down for like the 12 to 13-year-old demographic. So, but the other thing about that guy, the cameraman Alan Covert, he's like a MAGA guy, or I don't know if he's a MAGA guy so much, but he's like a sort of true blue American sort of guy. Like he's when you go to his Instagram, it's all these like Constitution quotes and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, he's always mixing it up on social media.
Yeah. And I think he's
That's
like
awesome.
resigned from the entertainment industry. He just
Well, Grandma's Boy was
Oh yeah.
his labor
Yep.
of love, his epic, and
yeah.
what's left to do.
Yeah. um yeah, so interesting like history. Did you guys do like camps as kids?
I did, but I never like stayed overnight for a long period of time. Like I went to a camp right outside of town, but it was a day camp. Like I got to go home at night. So
Yeah.
just some wrestling camps I would go to that was like, overnight, but those weren't fun, not like this. So
Oh, those were overnight? But those were you older when you did those?
yeah, like middle school and then early high school and stuff. Yeah. So,
Okay.
elementary school was like day camp, but yeah, I never went away. What about you guys?
Yeah, so in New England, like camp is a big deal. Um, I went to day camp, I think, till I was like 10. And in fifth grade, they have you go to for a week to like familiarize you with camp. Everybody from our elementary school went to a 5 day camp called Alton Jones. Like you just go for a week and sleep in a cabin, and high schoolers are your counselors. And it was a really formative experience because you're a little kid, but like that the high school counselors are smoking weed and having sex. And also, one of the main guys running it was our gym teacher, and he was also clearly getting high, like had red eyes and stuff. And then later in middle school, I went to sleepaway camp. But like this movie does a good job at capturing a really important part of camp, which is that the social hierarchies of camp are different than the social hierarchies of high school. And one thing I remember even more than going to camp is there would always be kids in high school, like, and I'm not trying to hate, but it's just interesting in regards to this movie is there would always be kids who were not particularly cool and would go to camp and come back like a little hot to trot, and they'd sort of be like, well, like I won the archery competition, so like, am I really a fag? And we'd be like, yes, you still are. Like, but at camp, like they had a different social valence or whatever, and that's one of the interesting things about camp. And they sort of address that early in this movie, where that same Josh character, or no, it's Keenan who
Yeah.
says everybody's fat here, so that's not your identity.
Yeah.
And camp is sort of like that. It's a different, it's a different setup, and maybe you slot in differently than you do at your normal high school, and that's what's
At camp, you can maybe acquire a Canadian girlfriend that your
yeah,
friends back at school will
absolutely.
never believe you about. Um, I didn't really, so I didn't do these kind of camps. Um, and this specific kind of camp to me was like, this was like TV camp. Like this was like I believe they were real, and I knew that some people did go to them. But I grew up, in the West, in a Western state, and it was sort of like, oh, that's like what like East Coast people do or something like that. Like I did scout camps, right? Like we would
Okay.
do long
Yeah.
hikes that were, but never more than 4 nights, maybe 5 nights. So we'd do like really long hikes and stuff, like Monday to Saturday. or we'd go, yeah, like stuff like that. But it was like all boys. So the degree was your camp like co-ed?
Some of them were, yeah. Though of course the cabins were single sex. But I've always had the impression, and I could be wrong here, but when you would go to camp on the East Coast, there would be kids from all over the country. So
Yeah,
I always had the impression that New England, and in particular upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, were the places where a lot of camps were. And also, I don't know if we want to get into this, but one thing you're just aware of living in New England is there's a huge Jewish camp culture.
yeah.
I don't know if
That
you,
Yeah.
I was going to go into that. Yeah,
yeah. And so, like, usually, I would, like, where I grew up, I don't know, it was maybe a third Protestant, a third Catholic, a third Jewish, something like that. And so my Jewish friends would go to these Jewish camps, and they would be very similar to our camps, but also have like religious and cultural content. And I know that there were a ton of those in upstate New York and northern New England as well. So
yeah. And then like there was the camp culture. There's a bunch of like the whole Borscht Belt like comedian thing. Like there was like comedian like the Jewish camp circuit. We used to be like really robust and like it was a whole big thing. Like how so it always like seemed so crazy to me. Like I would hear about these camps where kids would go for like most of the summer, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like that. And that sounded like, on one hand, kind of cool, but on the other hand, like someone's getting molested, right? Like it sounds like that's too long. Like you should like a 12-year-old or whatever should not be gone that long, but some people did that.
that's interesting. I think when I did it, the longest I ever did was 2 months. And like, yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things that mitigates against that, well, maybe this is dumb. I was just going to say, like, there's not a ton of private space. Like when I went, you're sleeping in a cabin with like 16 other boys, and if some guy, you'd literally have to go to the woods to get molested. Which maybe, maybe that's a
Was there
fine
was there
setting.
no wood? Was there no woods around when you're in the woods?
No, I guess that's a good point.
Is there a shortage of woods?
It seemed very safe to me at the
Yeah.
time, but I guess I had an innocent mind.
Well, and yeah, I guess you weren't, targeted. You weren't groomed. That's good.
You were too much of an alpha.
No, I was super alpha as like a
Yeah,
12-year-old,
exactly.
so they probably knew I'd beat the shit out of them.
um all right, let's yeah, I was just curious about your camp experience. Yeah, it's like one of those things growing up. So I grew up in Utah, and it's like you'd watch like the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, and sometimes it just felt like, what I was seeing, because America is such a big country, which I think people sort of which a lot of Americans I don't think realize how big their own country is. And it would be weird to me, like I would watch these things and be like, that's like a that's like a different country, basically. Like they just do things a little differently there. And it's not to say we didn't have those camps in Utah, but like I don't know, it just wasn't part of like the local culture for kids to do those. You do scout camp, but not this kind.
No, and it's very interesting. I think there's so many things in America where the way a certain cultural experience is rendered in media can make you feel like you're not having the real American experience. But like before they were in movies, they actually were sort of subcultures, not mainstream. Because, once you're in middle school, if you're like a really good athlete, especially with football, you can't be gone all summer. Like you
Yeah.
literally
Yeah,
have to
absolutely.
practice and do two-a-days or whatever. So it's like a little weird that it would be presented as, oh, this is just, and there's so many things like that. I mean, I don't know that many super rural people, but even something like the mall, or there's a million things like this where I think they get captured in media in a certain way, and then people who don't have access to that experience feel like they're missing out on something. But it really is like regional or subcultural. There's parts of the country that do this and parts that don't. So yeah, it's not
Yeah.
it's not really a universal American thing, but it does have a very American feel, I think, because it's out in nature. It feels frontiersy, and maybe because it's located in New England, which is, the oldest part of the country.
Yeah.
And some would say the
Th-
best, but
this movie,
surely not
though,
me.
this movie is not New England.
Yeah, yeah.
This is North Carolina, um, which I don't think they ever say in the movie. I just looked it up. And the place where
No,
they
they
film
don't. Yeah.
is still like an active camp.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I thought,
Yeah.
it was like a set piece they did or something. So
No, they used two different real camps in North Carolina, and which I assume is like part of the Appalachian or something like that.
Were the two camps a fat kid camp and an alpha kid camp?
I don't know. That would be very funny. Yes, and I really like the idea in the movie of like the rival camps. Like there's and it's like a jock camp in effect. Like it's like put these two together like, on purpose just to like make
Well,
them hate each other. But
I don't know if that's real, but one thing I do know is that, like, it's crazy. I mean, there's so many weird things like this when you're a kid, but I do remember being at a camp where there was a girls' camp across the lake, and it was every night. It was like, we're gonna sneak out, walk to the midpoint around the lake, and meet the girls. And it's like, do you even know that the girls are coming? And it's like, no, we just hope they have the same thought that we had.
did it
Of like,
work?
none of the times I did it, but I assume
Yeah,
probably once or twice.
you needed to be doing some sort of mating call from across the lake.
Yeah, yeah.
Smoke signals. And it's which smoke signals. Another part that I kind of wanted to touch on is, this is part of scouting too. Big part of scouting is like how camps, all these everything American outdoors. I guess especially since since a lot of it got developed in maybe the 50s or something. There's this big like Native American component, and there may be zero Native Americans involved, but and in this movie they do it too. Like in the final race, they like the fat kids all wear, uh, feathered headdresses and stuff.
yeah,
Um,
that was pretty
that was like a
funny.
big
It's like I know it's like a trite observation to say like you couldn't do that today, but it's like, that would be like problematic. Like they wouldn't have the kids doing that today, dressing up like Indians and stuff. Um,
yeah. But it really is like part of, I don't know, Degree, if your camps did that, but like everything scouting related always had this big like Native American aesthetic component to it,
Well,
which was just sort of for fun. But
yeah, it absolutely did, as did Boy Scouts, which I didn't do beyond middle school, but my brother became an Eagle Scout, and so I got to sort of see what that whole process was like and the culture, and they were very into like admiring the Native Americans. And what's funny about that is, so my high school, our mascot or our team name used to be the Red Raiders, as in, Indians
the Red
raiding,
Man, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, raiding colonists or whatever. And then later they kept Raiders, got rid of the red, and changed it to Pirates. But I remember talking to a teacher once, and he got really pissed off, where I was saying, like, for the original settlers of America, like, a Red Raider would be a horrifying thing. So in another 200 years, are we going to have like the Framingham Al Qaeda? Like once we've defeated them, we decide we can admire them. And yeah, nobody found that amusing or insightful, but
Oh, I could
I
totally
think it
see it.
is
Yeah.
it is kind of interesting that it's like once you've conquered a people, you can immediately shift to making like a caricature of them that you want your kids to emulate. Like that's pretty weird. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, but it's one of those cultural things that's a little bizarre until you give it deeper thought.
yeah. Well, one of the colleges I went to was University of Utah, and so they're the Utes. And I remember these people were like complaining because they would have this guy, like he was an actual native, but he would do like these ceremonial dances like at basketball games and stuff. And people are like, well, how would you feel if like if they were like doing that for your religion at the half court mark during a game? I'd be like, that would be super cool. I
Well,
wish they would like.
also, it's like, I don't mean to contradict you, but it's such a bizarre question because it's like the real equivalent is, it's like, imagine that there were 1,000 Christians left on earth, and like Christianity had been totally biologically geographically and culturally defeated, and like Christians lived on reservations and their homelands were occupied by other people. And then it's like once a
So
year.
exactly as things are now. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, sure. But it's like, and then once a year they dress up as you and like pretend that Jesus Christ is cool. If someone's like, would you like that? I'd sort of be like, well, I think I'm killing myself because of all the other things like, that have to happen to make that situation possible. Not that they're like wearing costumes, but just that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like a conquered people to begin with.
People actually do wear my religion as a Halloween costume. They do like the Mormon missionary thing, and every year they think it's funny.
That's true, but you guys are winning, so it has like a different.
Yeah,
You
you
guys
can
have
like
TFR. You guys don't want to kill yourselves.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to the movie. I think I'm gonna paywall this bad boy too. I'm gonna paywall it right here. So if anyone
oh,
wants to
let's
actually
go.
if anyone wants to hear movie content, you just got screwed.
This concludes the free preview, full episode available for premium subscribers on Substack.com. Thank you for listening to the Granite Mountain Movie Club.